So I realized I've talked about books, like, kind of a lot on Pain Talk, like, a good amount, and I've never just come here and told you guys, like, what my favorite books are, and, like, you know, the genres I read, and stuff like that. So I figured, why not do that today? First and foremost, if you guys have read any books lately that you think I would like, you know what I'm into pretty well by now if you've been watching, so I'd love to hear that. I really would. I'm always on the lookout for new books, so definitely comment below if you have anything. I want to start off by saying I have a huge blind spot in what I read. Namely, I don't read much fiction, like at all. I read basically 99% nonfiction, and I'm really trying to work on it, especially because I love writing, as I've also mentioned a ton on this show, and I write only fiction. I suppose, I guess, like, you could say when I write like a video essay for the main channel that's writing nonfiction, but like, I'm not a scholar, so no, it's not. But yeah, no. So that's the big preface here, is that I am not very versed in fiction. I'm going to talk about 2 fiction books here, just because they are some of my favorite books that I think are really good. But like, I am not at all, like, if you're sitting here like, oh, this guy might have a good book recommendation, I'm not the guy on fiction. Like, I don't know much about fiction. I read mostly history, political science, and philosophy, namely philosophy. That's probably my biggest genre, is philosophy. And honestly, I think the area in which I read the most fiction is comic books, and that's why I didn't read much, like, literary fiction for such a long time, because I was like, well, if I want to read fiction, I'm gonna go read a comic book about a guy with a hammer, because, like, that just sounds way cooler than reading, like, why would I read fiction about a sad British man? Because that's what so much fiction is always read as to me, and only now have I realized, like, I am an idiot, and there is so much value in reading very realistic fiction. The most recent fiction book I've read outside of the one I'm reading right now, which is Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, going to be reading that for a long time, especially because I read fiction way slower than nonfiction. The most recent I read was All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers by, I believe his name is Terry McCarthy. If I got that wrong, I'm going to correct it, because I'm very bad with authors' names, but it's called All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers. I got it in a very small mass-market paperback, and it's just about this guy who's kind of figuring his life out, and he's going around the country while he's doing it, and it is genuinely so interesting. To me, I think, as somebody who is not the biggest critic, I'll say, like, I'm not somebody, if you hand me a gourmet plate of sushi and 7-Eleven sushi, like, there's like an 80% chance I'm gonna get it wrong, which is which. Like, I am that guy, I'm not good at that, and I think that's important to state, right? With that being said, though, I think that I know when something is good when it makes me want to do what I'm reading in the book. Like, if I'm reading a book about, like, a PI, and it makes me really want to be a PI, that's how I'm like, oh yeah, this is some good stuff. Because I think that's what the best, like, media does. It makes you be like, I wish I was, like, genuinely there living this. That's just always been the way I've looked at it in my own head, as somebody who, for years, everything they read was like, oh my god, my career will be a fighter pilot. I loved Stargate. And then I was like, why? Like, I'm not going to be fighting aliens. Like, why did I think that? Like, why would I ever be like, yeah, the American military is the way to go, because I loved the series where they fought aliens. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. That used to genuinely be a thought of mine. Like, I watched Stargate and I was like, yeah, I'll probably be doing this. I'll probably be joining the military. As if they have the portal that is in the middle of Egypt that takes you to other planets. With that huge tangent out of the way, though, the reason I'm saying that about All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers is because I, historically, as somebody from the East Coast, have been the biggest snob, and I don't like visiting the South very much. I mean, after going to Atlanta for like 3 years, a ton now, I can say I appreciate the city of Atlanta, but like Midwest, Illinois, North Carolina, even Delaware is cutting it for me. Like, I'm definitely a city guy. Like, I totally am, right? Or country. I don't like when it's like just like a McDonald's and a highway. And a lot of America's like that. This book made me want to put on like some cowboy boots and just hit the highway, though. And that's impressive. because this is something I've always really hated, and this book has really wanted me to do it. I'm also not one for romances. I'm not a very romantic person in my own life, and I'm certainly not somebody who reads a ton of romance, and this book had a lot of romantic elements in it, and wow, did I enjoy them a ton. Like, way more than I ever thought I would enjoy romance in a book. Seriously, some very good stuff. Because so much of it is just about this main character seeing how temporary everything around him is, and like, that influencing how he's living his life. Because he's living so much of it based on like, what other people will be there. And at the end of the book, is this a spoiler? I guess it's not too much of a spoiler because it's kind of in the title. When all his friends are officially strangers, you know, when he is more like alone by the end of the book, and it kind of hits him, it really is something special. It really is. It transitions from this very mundane story, not mundane in terms of like it's boring to read, mundane though in terms of like it's a guy driving around and having different romances around the South of America. It turns into something almost psychedelic and spiritual as he does confront his own loneliness, and as he does realize that, as the title of the book is, all his friends and lovers are strangers in a sense, you know, and that nobody really knows him but himself. Seriously a great read. The other piece of fiction that I recently read is A Confederacy of Dunces. Recently, this is like going back 6 months now. Another great book. I think I have less intellectual stuff to say about that. And honestly, actually, I don't even know why I put that in here. I just wanted to have another fiction book in here because I loved it. I thought it was really good. Don't have that much to say about it though. Just a really funny book. Those are 2 pieces of fiction. Just to give you guys an idea of what fiction I like. As for philosophy, I am definitely somebody that falls into the trap that a lot of, I think, the modern day philosophically interested people fall into, where I do end up encountering a lot more secondary sources than primary sources. Right now, like very currently, I'm about to finish my first read through of all of Plato. I read through half of Plato, like everything Plato's ever written. By what I mean with all of Plato, it's not like one piece, like he's not like a series. But like I've been reading through all the Plato dialogues because I thought it'd be a good thing to do. It is a very good thing to do. If you're somebody that's maybe thinking of doing it to give yourself a better philosophical basing, I totally recommend. It's definitely, even just the idea of Plato's like world of forms and having this conception of having a perfect ideation of other imperfect copies of it or in the world around us is something that I think influences all philosophy. There's that one famous quote, all philosophy is footnotes to Plato. It's accurate. That's a very true quote. And I think the thing about Plato is that as much as it is obviously philosophy, I can never deny that, it doesn't read like it quite as much. I would say that Plato in many cases just reads as if it's a dialogue, and the biggest thing that I think is important about Plato as somebody who has no scholarly basing in any of this stuff, somebody that just really enjoys reading it, is like, this sounds insanely simple for a philosopher, but I guess he was kind of the first guy to really do it like this, so I think it probably is very important. He really came along and questioned everything. I think that's the biggest thing about Plato. Like, he looked at the way that the world was set up around him in Athens, Greece, and was like, why? And I think having that critical lens of the world around you and being able to, like, I've said this for a long time, even as somebody who maybe is not the most experienced in philosophy, to me, the mark of somebody who, like, I'm going to listen to their ideas versus I'm not going to listen to their ideas, when it comes to philosophy, is their ability to conceive of a world entirely different than the one we live in. Like, if I'm reading a philosopher and they're, like, very cynical about the way the world works, or they're like, this is the world that's why I don't really like Hobbes. I think that a lot of, like, Hobbes' work is valuable and interesting, and I think it also has a very much has a reflection of Rousseau in it in a lot of ways. I probably shouldn't have said that though, because I'm not good enough at enunciating my ideas on it to really go into that, so ignore that. As much as I think he's interesting, I don't really think he's someone I should listen to, because he's looking at the world around him and only thinking about the world based on that. And when you look at Plato, who came along and was able to conceive of entire different worlds, it's hard then to go back to Hobbes, or forward to Hobbes, I guess is more accurate, and go like, this is somebody worth listening to. Because it doesn't feel that way, because all he can conceive of is what's around him. He can only live in the world around him and interpret it. He can't actually change it, you know? And I think that's, to me, like, I think that's an important mark of a philosopher. I also want to, you know, bookmark this with, I understand that that's just, like, my own personal interpretation of these things. I do understand that, like, the Cynics and all these different philosophers have a ton of value in them. And, like, Hobbes is obvious, you know, like, I'm not saying I've debunked Hobbes. I'm just saying I personally find a ton of value in people that don't do what Hobbes does. That's what I'm trying to say here. I don't want to seem like I think I know more than Thomas Hobbes. I guess I probably do, though. He was around 1600, so yeah, I'll give myself that. Sorry, Hobbes. I kind of gotcha. So right now I'm reading through all of Plato. I'd say like my first sort of philosophical love, I guess. That sounded weird, but the first big thing that got me into philosophy was Albert Camus. I don't even remember why. I picked up The Stranger one day when I was younger, and I really have just been continuing since. After that, I read a lot of Nietzsche. Didn't understand a word of it, but I thought it was interesting. I thought The Genealogy of Morals was great. But as far as Camus goes, The Stranger, The Fall, and The Myth of Sisyphus are three of my favorite books ever. I think they also influence a ton of my thought. I think that, like, starting with somebody like a Camus that has such a postmodern perspective on ethics and meaning and systems of meaning has really influenced everything I've ever thought about after that, because that's like the idea that everything can be nothing when you put it all together is a very postmodern idea. You know, Camus definitely doesn't exist dealing with these big ideas that are big sweeping ideas, you know what I mean? He's not a very modern guy in that sense. Or I guess, I don't know, he doesn't abide by modernity. What wording would you use for that? And that's starting with Camus influenced my thought, the way I think a ton. And I'm sure you guys can see that. People have said that to me before, of like, you thought you were smart in this video, but you literally just talk about absurdism. And to them I say yes. And I realized that. I definitely, probably didn't realize it on those videos that people commented it, to be fair, but I am totally influenced by it, and I do understand that. You know, I think I don't know, I think the first philosopher you read is definitely going to have a ton of influence on you, no matter what. And after that, what really got me into like a lot of more political philosophy, which I'm going to touch on semi-lightly here because I don't like to get too deep into stuff like that here on Paint Talk, as you guys know, but my cousin gave me Noam Chomsky, The Common Good, like the very small paperback edition of it, which I actually unfortunately lended to a girl. That went up in flames, so she still has my copy of The Common Good. Very sad there, but Noam Chomsky, I think, influenced my thought in a lot of ways too, because living in America, living in this very binary of like, are you a conservative or a liberal? You know, like those were the two options I was presented. I think a lot of people end up having first of all, I think a lot of politics is defined by people hating those two options, right? To speak somewhat, a very tiny bit here on it, right? I think a lot of politics in America is defined by by everybody hating those two options. Chomsky, I think, was the first legitimate source I read that went like, there is a whole infinite swath of other things you're allowed to think. Like, he was like, you don't need to fit into these conceptions, and so much of the conceptions that you exist in when you think about these things that you see on the news are entirely fake. And him like questioning that and presenting like almost just an alternative, like you don't have to think in the, you know, in what's on the ballot. I think that is very important. Why I recommend him to anybody. Although I also, obviously he is somebody who has like a very certain political perspective. He is an academic, so I do think that whether you agree with that perspective or not, it gives it a little bit more credence, is the way I look at it. As much as I have an odd relationship with that because I don't like academia. I think it has a lot of, especially modern academia, has a lot of like problems in terms of like how much I can really trust it, but like trust it in a very practical sense. But like I can't deny that having somebody having a huge background in that gives them a great amount of credence. I mean, he debated Foucault. He did do that. You know what I mean? So it's hard for me to look at him and go like, you have less credence because of that. So I think he's a good scholarly source to go to. I understand if that's not your cup of tea though, and I'm not one of those guys who is going to ever be like, you are bad because you don't think that thing. I don't care. I would talk to anybody. But moving along from that, some other stuff that I've read that I think is really good is Rousseau. Rousseau is like a pure Enlightenment philosopher, and I love the Enlightenment. Going back to modern day academia, I know there's a huge rejection of it, like in the modern day, but I think people don't understand. In my take, again, as somebody who is coming here, just read a bunch of books and is blabbing on the internet, I feel the need to preface everything with that. I don't think people understand how radical it is, though, to be in the past when, like, freedom of speech never existed. Imagine living in a world where the idea of freedom of speech is, like, never, ever a thing, and you came up with it. Like, that is so much. Like, I don't think people give that enough credit, And that's why I think I am, like, love the Enlightenment and think it's so interesting, because yeah, no, did it fix all of the world's problems? Not at all. But, I mean, like, imagine if that never happened. Imagine how great that is, that did happen. So I'm a big fan of the Enlightenment, and Rousseau is, like, the quintessential philosopher. Specifically, I really like his discourse on inequalities and his social contract. I think are really good. So yeah, those are some of my favorite books. Yeah, I think I covered a good amount of the basis of what I really like to read. And it's mostly philosophy, like I said. So to give you guys a basing of like what my primary sources of philosophy are, I'd say those are them. And I also, outside of like other things that aren't as much primary sources, I really like the idea of like system building and stuff like that. Kind of like a Hegelian thing, I guess. But I don't have any, like I've never read Spirit of Phenomenology or whatever that book is, so can't really cite it here. But yeah. Just a little glimpse. Let me know your favorite books down below, and let me know what you're reading, and let me know if you have any books you think I should read. This is the painting. Tried to do a figure here. I think where I messed up is I didn't leave the torso deconstructed enough. But I like the face. I like this. I actually do like this. I think this is nice. I think it's visually pleasing, and I like the fact that I can see a lot of my own references in it. I can see a little bit of like the messiness of a Rothko around here. He's one of my favorite painters. I can see a little bit of pop art in the line work. Which is one of my favorite moments in art, I guess, movements or whatever. And I see a lot of comic bookiness in it, which is where I started. So yeah, I like this. I like this painting a lot. So this will be up on the Instagram later this week. And until next time, guys, gals, and pals, my name is Max Dice. This is Paint and Talk episode 144. I'm here every morning, painting and talking with you all.